Imagine the world around you changing entirely in just 6 days. It sounds impossible, right? But in 1967, that's precisely what happened in the Middle East. The 6-Day War, a clash that seemed to last a blink of an eye, turned the region upside down. Nations found their boundaries redrawn, and political landscape shifted dramatically. This wasn't just any conflict, it was a game changer. Hello and welcome back to Eccentric History. In this video, we will explore how within less than a week, a small nation like Israel emerged with new territories and a completely altered strategic position. But before we begin, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel for more amazing content. The tipping point, Syria's stance. Syria found itself at a critical crossroads in 1967. Damascus, the nation's heart, faced a gut-wrenching decision: protect their territories or prioritize the survival of their army. As the Syrian opposition wavered, Damascus opted for a move that would go down in history as a game changer. Rather than keeping troops stationed at vulnerable points, they began pulling brigade after brigade away from direct combat. Why? Because while losing the Golan Heights was a bitter pill to swallow, the dissolution of their army would mean a catastrophic defeat for the Syrian nation. The numbers reveal the heavy tolls this war had on Syria. By the end of hostilities on the night of June 10th, a staggering 2,500 Syrian soldiers lay dead, another 5,000 injured, and 591 found themselves captured, now prisoners of war. In stark contrast, Israel's losses numbered at 127 killed and 600 wounded. Such figures don't just represent numbers on paper, but illustrates the weight of choices made in those crucial days. The narrative of the 6-Day War isn't just about territory or politics, but also about individual lives, strategic decisions, and the ripple effects they create. As Damascus's actions during those days reveal, sometimes nations must make difficult decisions to ensure their longer-term survival. Israel's strategic depth, a dual-edged sword. In the aftermath of the 6-Day War of 1967, Israel found itself in a transformed geopolitical landscape. The country had acquired vast territories: the Sinai Peninsula, the Golan Heights, and the West Bank, shifting the balance of power in the region. These lands weren't just spoils of war, they were crucial strategic assets. The Sinai, a vast desert expanse, acted as a protective barrier between Israel and potential threats from Egypt. The Golan Heights, rising majestically from the surrounding plains, offered Israel a vantage point, ensuring any Syrian advance could be spotted from miles away. Meanwhile, the West Bank served as a buffer against Jordanian threats, while also bringing important religious sites under Israeli control. But these territories weren't just passive lands, they were active buffer zones. Israel, previously squeezed into a tight space, could now breathe a little easier, with these territories acting as cushions against immediate threats. The fact that the Sinai was occupied was monumental. Even if Israel lacked the forces for a full occupation from 1967 to 1973, the Sinai remained a pivotal buffer zone. Similarly, the acquisition of the Golan Heights provided Israel with multitudes of advantages in northern Israel, and control of the West Bank presented both strategic and religious significance. However, as Israel began establishing settlements in these newly acquired lands, challenges emerged. While the political and religious motivations behind building settlements, especially in the West Bank, were understandable, they brought complications. Establishing settlements in the Sinai, for instance, meant Israel had to now defend it, turning what was supposed to be a part of their strategic depth into potential points of vulnerability. The same was true for the Golan Heights. Every new settlement reduced the strategic advantage the region provided. In essence, while Israel had gained depth on the map, the rush to populate these regions ironically began eroding the very advantage they were supposed to provide. The territories, while offering a protective layer, also exposed Israel to a new set of challenges, making their strategic depth truly a dual-edged sword. Settlements, political gain at a strategic cost. Following Israel's significant territorial gains, the decision to populate these regions seemed almost inevitable. Building on the momentum of the previous acquisitions, the establishment of settlements was not merely a matter of expanding territory, it was deeply rooted in religious, historical and political motivations. Historically, regions like the West Bank were integral to Jewish heritage. They echoed tales from ancient scriptures, stories of patriarchs and significant biblical events. This profound connection provided a religious rationale for Israelis to resettle in what many considered their ancestral homeland. Politically, these settlements underscored Israel's intent to assert its sovereignty. By populating these regions, Israel aimed to cement its claim, making any future negotiations about these territories more complicated. Every new settlement was, in a way, a political statement, a declaration of intent and permanence. However, while the religious and political motivations for these settlements were clear, the strategic implications were more nuanced. These newly populated areas, while symbolizing Israel's resilience and determination, also began to eat away at the military value of the buffer zones. What was once a vast empty space acting as a deterrent against potential adversaries became points of contention requiring defense and resources. The Sinai, initially a vast buffer against Egypt, saw Israeli settlements spring up, turning vast stretches of strategic depth into pockets of vulnerability. The Golan Heights, once a pure vantage point against Syria, now had Israeli communities that needed protection, reducing its strategic value. Thus, while the settlements solidified Israel's historical and political claims, they indirectly reduced the protective cushion these territories offered. Each house built, while a symbol of determination, also became a potential target, complicating Israel's defense strategy. The drive to assert historical and religious rights came at a tangible strategic cost, posing the question: were the settlements worth the dilution of the very security these territories were supposed to ensure? The West Bank dilemma. In the aftermath of establishing settlements, one territory stood out with particular significance: the West Bank. The West Bank emerged as a focal point of international scrutiny and domestic debate. The annexation of the West Bank by Israel didn't receive the international nod of approval. Most nations, along with key international institutions, refrained from recognizing Israel's sovereignty over the region. This lack of endorsement added layers of diplomatic challenges for Israel on the global stage, making it a persistent point of contention in international forums. Inside Israel, however, the debate was even more passionate. The West Bank wasn't just another territory, it held deep-seated historical and religious significance. Many Israelis with a profound sense of connection to their biblical heritage saw the West Bank as an inseparable part of historical Israel. For them, settlements weren't merely political instruments, they were a realization of a divine promise, a return to lands where prophets once walked. The tug of such emotional and historical ties was strong, driving a narrative of reclaiming and resettling. Yet, there existed a counter-narrative within Israel. Fueled by diplomatic pragmatism, this perspective advocated for a more measured approach, emphasizing the value of international relations and the potential benefits of land for peace deals. The proponents of this view argued that while the historical and religious connections to the West Bank was undeniable, the modern geopolitical landscape required a more flexible stance. They believed that clinging to the West Bank might cost Israel not just diplomatically, but also in terms of lasting peace with its neighbors. The West Bank dilemma was the heart of Israel's post-Six-Day War challenges. It was a territory that symbolized both the depth of Israel's historical roots and the intricate complexities of modern-day diplomacy. Saddling between the pull of the past and the needs of the present, Israel found itself at a crossroads, trying to reconcile its rich history with the needs of contemporary statecraft, diplomatic tensions, and the road to peace. While the West Bank dilemma stirred internal debate, the international arena had its own set of dynamics in the aftermath of the Six-Day War. The world, alert to the seismic shifts in the Middle East, responded swiftly. The United Nations passed resolutions that, in essence, asked Israel to relinquish territories in exchange for peace. These resolutions became the diplomatic instruments that nations worldwide referenced when discussing the Middle East crisis, underscoring the urgency for a peaceful resolution to the territorial disputes. Yet, in the shadows of these diplomatic pressures, glimmers of hope began to emerge. Nearly a decade after the war, in a landmark moment, Israel and Egypt took steps towards reconciliation. By the late 1970s, the two nations reached a historic accord, culminating in the return of Sinai Peninsula to Egypt. This peace treaty was a testament to the power of diplomacy and showcased how erstwhile foes could find common ground. Israel's abandonment of the Sinai was not just a territorial exchange, it was a gesture of commitment towards a peaceful Middle East. Following this precedent, another monumental moment arrived in the 1990s. More than 2 decades post-war, Israel and Jordan, two nations with their share of historic animosities, formed their own peace treaty. This agreement further solidified the idea that dialogue and compromise could indeed bridge even the deepest of divides. The journey from intense post-war diplomatic tensions to groundbreaking peace deals highlights the intricate dance of geopolitics. Reflections on security. Considering the progress of diplomatic reconciliation, one would assume that Israel, having gained substantial territorial and strategic advantages, would feel a strong sense of security. Yet this was far from reality. Despite their victory in the Six-Day War and the following peace treaties, a lingering sentiment of vulnerability persisted among Israelis. On paper, the territorial expansions into Sinai, the Golan Heights, and West Bank provided Israel with strong military strategists. These territories acted as buffer zones intended to keep potential threats at arm's length. But security isn't merely a matter of geography or military might. It's a combination of perception, psychology, and the unpredictable dynamics of regional politics. Consider the intricacies of the Middle Eastern landscape. Historical injustice coupled with the ever-shifting alliances and deep-seated religious sentiments meant that peace was often fragile. Every border gained was another border to defend, and each settlement built became another potential flashpoint for tension. The territories, while granting strategic depth, also brought new challenges. The memory of past conflicts and the traumas associated with them meant that many Israelis, despite their nation's victories, continued to feel the weight of potential threats looming on the horizon. The Six-Day War offers more than just a historical recount. It's an illustration of the complex interplay of strategy, sentiment, and geopolitics. But as Israel's journey reveals, can territorial gains ever truly quench a nation's thirst for security, or is peace a deeper pursuit rooted in understanding and dialogue? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more amazing content. We'll see you guys in our next video.